We are live now. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome all the eminent speakers from the government, along with our chair and co-chair of our ASSOCHAM Startup Council. This is our fifth editions of Roundtable Discussions that we have been doing for the past 1.5 months, and the topic is on government initiatives and scheme for startup. I would like to invite our chairman, Mr. Rohit Bhayana, to kindly address the welcome address along with moderating the session, sir. Over to you, sir.
Robinson, a very good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Robinson, I thought it was the fourth roundtable, but if it's the fifth, that's good. It's more accurate.
Yes, fifth, sir.
Fifth, wonderful, wonderful. Thanks for flagging that. So a very good afternoon, and it's a pleasure to be here on this fifth roundtable of ASSOCHAM around startups. And it's just a quick introduction. My name is Rohit Bhayana. I'm the chair along with my other co-chair, Neelam Dhawan. It's a pleasure to have you all here, especially the panelists, the experts, right in the middle of the day, sparing time and sharing your views with the startup participants. It was about a month and a half back, mid-May, when Neelam and I ran a feedback session with about 60 to 70 startups across all sectors, different geographies, different stages of the startups. And what we realized was that it was extremely surprising how little the startups knew about the government initiatives to enable and foster the whole ecosystem around the startups. And today's agenda is exactly that. Let's peel this many layers. We have all the experts here today. Let's peel this many layers and understand from various dimensions of the government. We have Salil Sait from Startup India Hub. We have Arijit Dutt from who's from SIDBI. We have Jeet Vijay. He'll join us a little late. He's from METI Startup Hub. He's the CEO there. We have Dr. B. Sahu, who's the regional manager and head of the NRDC IP division. Then we have Dr. Anita Gupta. She's a scientist with the government in NST EDB. And then we have obviously Neelam and I to chip in with our bits as well. The whole objective is, and when we'll try to keep this to within an hour and then keep the lion's share of time aside for questions, which will keep coming along the way. So Robinson, I hope you'll help me with bringing them up onto the main chat, the questions, and I can take them from there. So with that, I open the session. Neelam, any opening remarks? You've firsthand been very actively involved with the government. So actually, rather than just straight away jumping into the panel, I was keen if you could add in some words as well.
Thanks, Rohit. Thank you. First of all, I'm looking forward to this session because it's going to be a good learning for me too. As I have been interacting with startups and many of the young entrepreneurs and promoters and founders, there is a clear lack of information around the policies which government has. In fact, we had somebody from Space Application Center from SSE, and we were surprised to hear about the programs they have for startups too on that particular panel. And that set us thinking that the more the startups know about what the government is doing for them, the more we can see that interaction and perhaps help that is needed to create this ecosystem. Needless to say, this ecosystem is employing close to 5 lakh employees in NCR region itself. And then when you look across the country, perhaps it will be more than 50 lakhs are employed in this ecosystem. And the wealth creation which we are seeing in the last few months, as well as few years, as and when a startup or a young company lists, it is incredible as to what we are seeing as wealth creation at this time. It is important for us to nurture this sector, and government's participation is really critical in nurturing any sector. So as I said, Rohit, it's a learning for me as well as for all the other people. And I look forward to understanding how the government can help this ecosystem grow much faster than what it has been done so far. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks, Neelam. Likewise, I think today's session is going to have a lot of import, a lot of content that gets taken off the session. And one thing which we promised to do, it came up in one of the first sessions, was that after the session gets over, Robinson and Varun, if we can share all these various tracks of the government, which are very supportive of the startup ecosystem, if we share with the startup community at large, the various schemes, the incentive programs and all that. We have promised to do that with the startups, and let's live up to that promise. So with that, without further opening remarks, Salil Seth, if that's okay with you, I would love to start with you. Mr. Seth is from Invest India. He's responsible for the Startup India Hub of Invest India. And if you can, Salil, if you can broadly talk about, firstly, your role, and then very specifically about Startup India Hub as part of Invest India, what you guys are doing, how you bring to bear the coordination and the collaboration with the government and the various schemes that are there for the startups. That'll be very, very useful. Thank you. Salil, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Rohit, and thank you for that introduction. Thank you, Neelam ma'am, and thank you the entire ASSOCHAM Startup Council for inviting us today. So, Robinson, if I could just share my presentation.
Yes, please.
So while the presentation is coming up, to give a brief introduction about myself, as I said, I'm Salil Seth. I'm one of the founding members of the Startup India team. I'm been associated with Startup India right from the start when it was launched back in Jan 2016. And during the course of my presentation, I'll explain what is the role of Invest India, what is exactly Startup India, and what do we do at Startup India Hub in Invest India.
Excellent.
Thank you, Rohit. So to start with, Startup India is a flagship initiative of Modi government, which was launched in Jan 2016 with an action plan. So Startup India is not a scheme of the government. It has an action plan which was launched to promote the startups in the country. It had three main pillars. First was simplification and handholding. Second was to create some initiatives, come out with certain schemes for funding startups. And third was to increase the industry academia partnership and incubation support available for startups at large in the country. So before we delve into what is exactly Startup India doing currently, just wanted to present you with some stats of where we have reached. Today's startup ecosystem in India is the third largest in the world. We have more than 53,000 recognized startups, which are recognized with the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Today, 45% of startups come from tier 2, tier 3 cities. Here, I would like to mention one interesting fact. When we started roughly 5.5 years ago, a target was set by Honorable Prime Minister for us that we have to take startup movement to each and every district of the country, to each and every city of the country. Back then, 85% of the startups came from Bangalore, Mumbai, and Delhi NCR region. And through our committed effort and certain schemes which we had come out, could be Startup India Yatra, we took this movement to the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, and we are happy to share that now 45% of startups are originating from tier 2, tier 3 cities. 53,000 plus startups have directly generated 5.6 lakh jobs. There's an average of 11 jobs created per recognized startup, and the number has increased 17% year over year since 2012. This is fairly about how the growth of startup ecosystem has happened in India. If we say that we have 53,000 recognized startups, what exactly it means? So when we started back in 2016, a lot of people were still finding about ourselves. They were still starting to coming to know about Startup India. And so that year we just had 800 startups getting recognized with us. Next year we saw almost a 10 times jump in that, more than 10 times jump, and we had 7,800 startups. And in the last financial year, we had 16,000 startups getting recognized, registered within India. And currently, each state, each UT has a startup. And on an average, 4 startups are being created in the country every year. This has led to significant job creation, as I said, within average of 11 jobs being created per startup. And this is a slide snapshot of how India has become a new hub to unicorns. So largely due to COVID, but yes, eventually the tech has taken off. In 2019, we saw only 9 unicorns being created. The same was 2020, 9 unicorns being created. But due to COVID, a lot of work from home technologies, every tech sector like food tech, ed tech, agri tech, fintech coming up. This year, we had 23 unicorns that has already been created. A unicorn actually is a startup with more than $1 billion valuation, and the number is still rising, largely due to the boom given by the pandemic. So today, India is home to 59 unicorns, which is just again third in the world after US and China. So now coming to what exactly is a Startup India Hub and what was the need to establish and launch a Startup India action plan. So back in 2016, when we were launched, there was not a nodal agency for startups at a national level. There was Karnataka Startup Society, there was Maharashtra State Innovation Society, there was Telangana State Innovation Society. In Kerala, we had Kerala Startup Mission. There were all these nodal agencies of state startup, state governments for startups, but not a single entity at national level who could look after the startup ecosystem, address their issues, address their problems. So this way, Startup India was launched. Alongside Startup India, a Startup India Hub was launched, which is the world's largest virtual incubation platform. The idea was there was a lot of information asymmetry which existed in 2016. If you are a new entrepreneur, or you're a college kid, or you've just recently graduated, or you were working for a 9-to-5 job and wanting to move to startup ecosystem, become an entrepreneur, do a business of your own, for a very simple thing like how to get an electricity connection for your office, how to register your corporate land, how to get all kind of clearances, all licenses which are applicable to your sector. The basic knowledge of which license are applicable, where to apply, how to proceed about them was not available anywhere in a single place. Second, we realized a lot of tools, templates, help is needed by startups when they are taking off, when they are in their first 6 months of the journey. A lot of resources are required. So for that reason, we had set up the Startup India Hub, and I'll go one by one what it offers. So resource partner services, we realized that in the first 6 months, startups need to create a website, they need to create a mobile app, they need to establish, they need a CA, they need a CS, they need a lawyer, they need cloud credits for probably hosting their applications. So we have partnered with 25 such organizations to provide these services free of cost and on pro bono basis. You can sign up with our partners such as Vakil Search or InstaCA and avail their services to register your company totally free of cost. After registering your company, you can approach AWS or DigitalOcean, who are our partners. They will give you $5,000 worth of cloud credits for free. Then you can approach Freshworks or Zoho, which is our partner, for 1 year free subscription of their SaaS platform and their entire business suite. So we have tried to partner with leading organizations to make the first 6 months journey of the startup really easy. Second, we came out with learning and development programs in association with Udemy, in association with Upgrad, which are actually paid entrepreneurship courses, and you can find them free on our website. Again, when I mentioned that, as I mentioned that a lot of startups require tools and templates in early days. For example, their legal paperwork, and they don't know how to go about it. So you can find this on our website, again, pro bono, free of cost. It could be an employee agreement, a template for an NDA. If you are getting into a contract, what nitty-gritties one entrepreneur has to take care of. There's also a virtual showcase opportunity available on Startup India Hub. Then this was what we initially launched in 2016, 2017 to reduce the information asymmetry in the system. As the system and as the startup ecosystem matured over time, we started partnering with corporate to launch corporate acceleration programs on our website as well. So we have partnered with Western Digital to do Data Innovation Bazaar. We partnered with SoftBank to run a special challenge of funding each startup, 5 startups, each startup up to $50,000. We have done a challenge with WhatsApp and similarly 29 other corporates. Again, we realized that while researching, there are almost 80 government schemes which exist at central level, and another 30 states have their own startup policies under which they offer various benefits to the startup ecosystem. This could be schemes from DST, DBT, MIT, various departments, MSME, ISRO, IDEX, for example, the latest one. These were the central government schemes, and then there were 30 state startup policies as well. So we have aggregated all this information in our schemes and policies section and built a kind of a dashboard where startup can enter their sector and a bare minimum few details, 10 to 12, and all the relevant schemes which are applicable to them according to their sector, according to the age of the startup, which where they are in their journey, are recommended to them, and all the information which is relevant to the scheme is available on our platform. It could be what benefits are available to them, where to apply, how to apply, exact links would be available, templates on how to apply will be available, and who's the right nodal person. So through secondary research, we try to keep this information updated and try to provide all this information to Startup India users on real time. So currently we have 5 lakh registered users and 254,000 average monthly users which spend 4 minutes plus on our website. Then alongside that, we realized that a network of these users also is very important to create. So not just startups can register on our website, incubators can register on our website to source startups, accelerators can register on our website, mentors can register on our website to provide mentorship. It just works like in any other social media platform where you can network with fellow ecosystem stakeholders and can send them a connect request, you can chat with them, you can exchange your contact details. So we have an ecosystem network. Until date, more than 25,000 requests have been sent and accepted by enablers from startups. So this could be mentors, this could be incubators, this could be accelerators. And finally, all the publications and reports which are there, it could be a report from NASSCOM, it could be a report from ASSOCHAM, CII, anything about startup ecosystem which could help, and it could be report from BCG, Bain, the Big Four, KPMG, EY, which could help startup create their pitch deck, provide them with primary research which they can source their data upon, is again available on our website. And so for all the audience, you should check out www.startupindia.gov.in, and all this host of services available free of cost on our website. Now, this was the virtual incubation part and the Startup India Hub. Alongside, as I said earlier, that there was a 19-point action plan. So there are some of the elements of an action plan which I'll discuss. I'll not go into detail all of them given the time constraint, but obviously you can reach out to Startup India afterwards. First and foremost was to enable market access for startups. Now, government today is the largest buyer in the country. Combined central government and all 36 states and UTs government, we are the largest buyer in the country. So one of the biggest change we have made available to startups is now that startups registered with us doesn't have to comply with prior experience, prior turnover criteria of any tender of central government. Also, they don't have to submit an EMD, which is earnest money deposit. Through a portal called Government e-Marketplace, startups can easily register on this portal. It's a very simple OTP-based verification, and all the government departments can directly order from that portal. So currently, in last 4 years, ever since this portal in 2017, startups, almost 10,500 startups have received more than 81,000 orders, valuing close to 3,800 crore rupees. Second part was to give government connects to the startups time to time in association with different ministries such as Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Urban Affairs. We keep on hosting open innovation challenges and provide incubation and mentorship support as to these startups to solve specific problems which certain ministries and departments face in their respective field. One example I would like to cite over here is we recently did a challenge with Ministry of Agriculture. They wanted to source a soil testing device which could test the soil as it could be as a kit which could be handed out to the farmers, and real-time testing of soil could be done. So we did an open innovation challenge for it. Applications were invited, and the best was selected by the ministry. Post that, the one which was ready to launch, market access grant was given to them, and one which was still in product development phase, incubation support and mentorship support was provided to such startups, all free of cost. The other element of this side is the domestic and corporate engagements. As I said, we have partnership with more than 30 plus corporates with whom we run these corporate innovation challenge, corporate acceleration programs. And till date, we have done 80 plus corporate partnerships, 80 plus corporate programs. Total 500 startups have been benefited. Some of the things I would like to say, you could go on our website. Some of the programs are still live. One with Mahindra is still live, where pilot orders, cash grants are given, and prototype facility is provided where corporates open the access to their own infrastructure and allow startup to innovate alongside them. And the other part of market access is the international engagement. We have 11 international engagements with countries such as Portugal, Korea, Japan, US, Sweden, all our counterparts over there. The idea is very simple, threefold: providing access to that country with ready partnership over there with our counterparts, so to make sure that you have a soft landing facility if you are willing to expand over there. Second, to create a global environment where you can learn from each other. We regularly host exchange programs with such countries where startups from India go to such countries. For example, pre-COVID era, last one we did was with Portugal. 5 startups from India went to Portugal, and 5 startups from Portugal came to India. And third is enabling access to the business environment in both the countries, where if there is some startup event, if there is some pitching opportunity available, funding opportunity available, it is available to the startups of both the countries. Then comes our second pillar, which was enabling access to funding, which was part of our action plan. So DPIT, the parent organization or the parent department of Startup India, have launched a 10,000 crore fund of fund, out of which 5,500 crore has already been invested into 72 VCs, and 480 startups have received 36,000 crore. So there is a catalyzing effect. Through fund of fund, we don't directly invest in startups, we invest in VCs, which also borrow money from outside, and they in turn invest in startups. This 72 VCs are listed on our platform. Their information is available on our platform, their email ID, how to apply to their funding, which is available, in which format the pitch deck is to be submitted. So you can just come to our platform, see this list. Even the details of these 480 startups who have been funded is available on our platform, and what they did to apply, they have done the experience sharing so that the ecosystem can learn from each other. So you can, I would request, please visit our platform. Second, what we have launched is Seed Fund, which we recently launched on 16th Jan on a 5-year anniversary. It was launched by the Honorable Prime Minister. Here we are directly investing into startups. So the idea is to invest in 300 incubators, who in turn will invest in 3,600 startups. Currently, 19 incubators have already been received this support. The list is available on our platform. And the startups can directly apply for a 20 lakh grant or a 50 lakh debt through our platform by applying to these startups. This scheme will be available till 2024. It's still in very initial phases. We have only received application from 500 startups. So I'll request all in the audience, if you're applicable, if the scheme is applicable to you, you're looking for funding, please do check it out. And the final pillar, which I said was the enabling ease of doing business, which was our part of the action plan. So combined in last 5 years, we have created 650 regulatory reforms, which have led to huge increase of ease of doing business. 610 state government reforms have come from the state governments, like 610 reforms have come at the state government level, and 47 reforms have come at the central level. I'll just cite 2 examples quickly to explain you what kind of regulatory support you can expect from us. So distribution of electricity 5 years ago was controlled in India. For example, if you put a solar panel on top of your house and you generate excess electricity, you cannot sell it to your neighbor. You have to sell it back to the government, the grid. This poses a huge problem to the EV industry, because charging stations essentially distribute electricity like the petrol pumps. So Ola, Mahindra, these companies approached us 5 years ago to enable or relax this law of constrained distribution of electricity for EV motor vehicle industry. So this was an archaic law launched in 60s and 70s to stop the black marketing of electricity, which posed a problem to the growth of EV industry. They approached us, we wrote white papers, we held exclusive roundtables, we approached the right ministry, and finally, under the FAME 2 policy, this law was relaxed for EV industry. At the state level, or just one more example from the center, the Angel Tax Exemption, which a lot of you might be aware about, that while raising the angel round, if you're raising your investment above the fair market value, earlier under Section 56, the excess amount above the fair market value was treated as income. But essentially, it is not an income, it's income from other sources. So now there is an exemption. It's a self-certification process. You can come to our platform, you can declare that you are raising an angel round from a recognized investor, and you will not have to pay that tax. Similarly, host of other regulatory reforms have been relaxed. Regulatory reforms have been brought out. Regulations have been relaxed, and you can approach us if you are facing any regulatory hurdle, and we'll do our level best to resolve it for you. And the final thing which I wanted to present about was National Startup Awards. And this is a thing which we have come out where we award startups in 36 sectors and 35 categories. One, the additional winner being a woman entrepreneur. And there are 36 winners. We come out with this every year. The importance of this awards is not the actual award we give it to the startup. That's a huge recognition. But we run an exclusive 1 year hand-holding support for all our 36 winners. It could be Investor Connect, providing connects with SIDBI, Mumbai Angels, Sequoia. We have ran workshops with them, providing mentorship. Corporate Connects, providing them with Government Connects, where they were looking, providing them with international market access by talking to our embassies over there, introducing our embassies to over there. Again, providing them with regulatory support, the Startup India benefits that are available, and providing them with the special innovation showcase virtually on our platform and physically if any opportunity or event takes place. Like now, one of the largest events being handled in Middle East, and most probably our winners will get a chance to physically represent India over there. So that was our quick 10-minute.
No. I'm actually glad, Salil, we started with you being the nodal agency for the government on this area. I don't think we could have had a more appropriate start, and it's just phenomenal to see what all is going on. Salil, I'm assuming everything that you talked about is obviously on the web, and if not, anyone who requests this deck to be shared, I'm sure that's available.
Yes, Mr. Rohit, I'll share this with the team, the ASSOCHAM.
Please do.
And they can distribute this deck. All this information is available on our platform. And anyone who reaches out to us, we'll be more than happy to share all the information. There's a Startup India kit. What I'll additionally do as well is I'll share that Startup India kit's electronic version with the ASSOCHAM team so that it could be distributed wherever they like. And it has all this information and much more. Given the time constraint, to keep it to 15 minutes. So
no, this is fine. And by the way, since
I have a question also for Salil before you go to the next speaker. Salil, there's a question in the chat which says, when you say startup for Startup India, are you referring to startups which DPIIT is recognized or any other scheme startups also in your talk just now?
Yes, Neelam. So we are referring to startups which are DPIIT recognized.
And there's a process for that which is also on your website.
Yes, the process for it is also on our website. It's a very simple process. Any startup can fill it within 10 to 15 minutes. We have system level integration with MCA. So if you are registered as a private limited or LLP, we'll pull all your data through MCA directly. You just come to our platform and just register for that, enter your SIN number. You have to answer 5 questions, 15 minutes, your application is done, and within 48 hours, we issue the certificate.
Okay, thanks. That was one of the questions which I thought was very relevant to clarify here. Back to you, Rohit.
Yeah, no, Neil, I'm glad you did that right in the beginning itself. Just moving down the chain, Salil talked about how the whole fund came together and then SIDBI got appointed. So I think just logically, naturally moving to SIDBI as the next speaker, we have Arijit with us, who's with SIDBI, who's a DGM with SIDBI. Arijit, over to you. If you could take us through your materials, your thought process, as well as very specifically perspectives which will be relevant to the startup ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you so much, and very good afternoon to all the esteemed members of ASSOCHAM and my esteemed co-panelists. Because we work together quite often with Startup India. And of course, it's a privilege to be, having the opportunity to reach out to so many startups in the audience. There's a great number of startups, and the time for startups probably could not have been better. What it is today, and as we look forward to them, and we look up to them to come up with innovative solutions. And as Salil was mentioning, the COVID gave an opportunity for many of them to come up with innovation and solutions for the nation, something which benefits the nation. And I'm sure this journey will go on with the increasing number of unicorns coming in, which we now, sort of losing track in counting. So I have a brief presentation about what SIDBI has been doing on the startup space. So I'll just share it. I hope it's visible.
Yes,
Yes,
you
it
can
is.
see.
Yeah, thank you. So SIDBI, just a brief slide on what SIDBI does. SIDBI was established under an act of Indian Parliament, and it's the principal financial institution or apex level institution set up for promotion, development, and financing of the MSME sector. Initially, when it was set up, it was the small scale industrial sector, and now it's the MSME sector. And we also, work with various institutions which are also engaged in similar activities. So with this is our basic mandate, and the various aspects or various kind of verticals that we have. Primarily on the financing side, we do a lot of indirect lending, where we lend to banks, NBFCs, small finance banks, microfinance institutions, even new age fintech company NBFCs, which in turn are lending to MSMEs. So we kind of strengthen the resource base of the intermediary institutions to enable them to lend onward to our target core constituent sector of MSMEs. Besides that, SIDBI also runs its own direct lending operations. So from time to time, we have come up with different kind of products which conventional lenders or banks or even NBFCs have not met. I mean, this it has included specific project finance schemes, equipment in finance in specific areas. We had a risk capital scheme which was similar to kind of quasi equity kind of in the nature of debt. And we have other schemes in the areas of invoice financing, which to help increase cash flow by financing the receivables of MSMEs, which is one of the major working capital requirements. And we also have arrangement for working capital limits to MSMEs. So when I say MSMEs, it also includes startups. Most MSMEs, most startups fall in the MSME sector. So we have another division which is called SIDBI Foundation for Microcredit. So wherein we lend to microfinance institutions, which in turn support entrepreneurs at the base of the pyramid, micro entrepreneurs. So mostly they are women who are earning livelihoods with some kind of economic activity. And we're happy to say that we also have a direct kind of lending to micro enterprises using a partnership model with a few MFIs, few microfinance institutions. So we try to leverage the operational strength and presence of the partner MFI or a fintech, and use that to channelize assistance. And finally, the vertical work which I am handling here is the fund of funds vertical, where we support emerging startups and MSMEs by way of contribution in alternative investment funds. So this was one of the questions also. A startup is an entity which is a private limited company or an LLP incorporated or registered in India. This is not older than 10 years, so it should not have been registered earlier than 10 years. And during these 10 years, the annual turnover in any financial year should not have exceeded 100 crore. And the entity should be working towards innovation, development, or improvement of products or processes, services, or it is a scalable business model with a high potential of employment generation or wealth creation. So this is broadly the government definition that of startups that we are following. This is the startup life cycle, and probably many of you would also already be aware of this. See, there's there's a graph which tracks revenue against the time, and as a startup makes its journey. So initially, and that's the red line which shows the revenue. So in the initial stage, when the startup is trying to break even, the kind of financing required is generally obtained from angels. There's something which we called FFFs, so friend, family, and in the lighter vein fools. So who are close to you, who are willing to back you, and this is in the nature of seed capital. Once the startup crosses this stage, I mean, there are many startups which are unable to cross this stage because of various reasons. So then they become eligible, or they move to the stage where they should go in for institutional kind of funding. So that is provided by the alternative investment funds or the venture capital funds, who who not only provide you financing, but they also do mentoring. They guide your operations they arrange connects on the side of marketing, and help the company grow to from early stage to the later stage. And there's another kind of instrument which is known as venture debt. So when we say these first, second, third, so they are called series A, B, C. I mean, the different rounds of funding, institutional funding that a startup needs raises from various alternative investment funds. So in this process, another option of financing available for startups is the venture debt option, which is different from conventional loans from banks. But here it is specifically designed by to cater to the needs of startups which have cash flow issues, which may not be having regular cash flows and may not be able to service a conventional loan. And then as the startup crosses and grows further, you have larger private equity funds and mergers, alliances, and it helps with the growth of mergers, acquisitions, and alliances, and with the final target of reaching an IPO and getting itself listed. So for any startup, it's important to get finance, and the appropriate form of finance, not just finance. The appropriate form of finance is very important. And this graph kind of tries to explain what kind of finance a startup should look at based on its cash flow, based on the stage in the startup life cycle. So this is an outline of what we have been doing under venture capital fund of funds operations. So fund of funds means that SIDBI contributes to the corpus of various venture capital funds. When I talked about this first, second, and third stage, these are the funds which support startups. I mean, they are technically, as per current nomenclature, they are known as alternative investment funds. So they raise money from people like SIDBI as well as other investors, pool together the money, identify startups, select startups where the money can be invested, support growth of the startup, and then exit from there, or give returns to the investors. SIDBI has been a very early, because the funding of startups or venture enterprises is specialized. So you need to understand, I mean, they cannot be funded as a normal routine business. They need to be supported in various areas, such as on the technical side, on the manpower management side, how to grow. And therefore, SIDBI has been following the route of supporting, young enterprises, innovative enterprises through the venture capital fund or AIF route. So we've been doing this since 1995, when we started by promoting state-level venture funds. So they were funds set up in different states like Rajasthan, Karnataka, and Gujarat, and so on, which would finance enterprises, emerging enterprises in their state. Slowly, we moved into financing of all India venture funds. Finally, subsequently we had an MSME risk capital fund of 2,000 crore, which we have fully committed to different alternative investment funds. We again launched another similar fund called in the India Aspiration Fund. And right now, as part of the Startup India Action Plan, we are, which was launched in January 2016 by the Honorable Prime Minister, we are operating the Fund of Funds for Startups, which has a corpus of 10,000 crore. It's a wonderful program, and as Salil explained, it just does not restrict itself to financing. It supports startups with a whole range of services, including mentorship, services from professionals, and so on, market connect to government, and so many other things which Salil spoke about. Besides the fund of funds for startups, SIDBI is also managing a fund called the Aspire Fund, which is a 310 crore fund of the Ministry of MSME, which is focused on agro and rural enterprises. So these are, this fund is committed to AIFs, which will be investing in agro and rural enterprises. And lastly, the third fund of fund, which SIDBI is managing, is the 1,000 crore UP Startup Fund, which is focused on the government on startups registered in Uttar Pradesh. So this is a broad overview of the fund of fund operations which SIDBI has been doing. As you see, it's being done for a long time, and but of late, especially with the Startup India Action Plan, it has become a very exciting and impactful space. So this is the, as I said, the 10,000 crore fund of funds is just give an understanding of what the scheme is. So this fund size is 10,000 crore, which will be built up over the 14th and 15th finance commissions by FY 2025. It will support alternative investment funds of any kind. I mean, they can be sector agnostic. There's no specific sector focus. The only requirement is that the alternative investment funds in which the investment is made out of FFS, they should invest twice that amount in startups. So this is helping attract and catalyze capital not just from this fund but also from other sources, and encourage movement of capital into startups. So while we have disbursed about 1,800 crores, and so the amount invested in startups out of this against this disbursement is more than 4 times that. So the sanction process, there's a as per the guidelines of DPIIT, so there's a venture capital investment committee which screens the proposals of AIFs and then is sanctioned internally in SIDBI. These are some of the other terms which I think for startup that may not be so relevant. The only thing is they need to approach these alternative investment funds, the names of which are available both in SIDBI micro. There's a microsite created for this. All the names of these funds are available, and once the startup gets into the ecosystem, they would know which fund to approach for the appropriate stage of finance, whether it's seed or it's initial early growth stage or later growth stage. And as Salil also said, their names and contacts are also available with them with the Startup India hub as well. The structure of financing is similar for the Aspire Fund as well, but the objectives are more focused towards agro and rural based micro and small enterprises. So the objectives are to create new jobs and reduce unemployment rather, promote entrepreneurship culture and grassroots economic development. And there's a focus on meeting social needs and strengthen competitiveness of the MSME sector. So here also, whatever the amount contributed under the fund, twice that amount needs to go into MSMEs, out of which at least one time the amount has to go towards agro and rural based startups, MSMEs, sorry. And this is the third fund which SIDBI is operating, which is the UP Startup Fund. It's a relatively new fund. And the initial corpus announced is 1,000 crores. It is focused on startups registered in Uttar Pradesh. And again, this fund also will invest in AIFs, which would in turn invest in startups. The AIF is required to invest at least 1.5 times the contribution which is made out of the UP Startup Fund in UP registered startups. This is all I have about the three main fund of funds which SIDBI has been operating. And I hope I've been able to give a broad overview and background of the schemes relevant.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you very much, Ariji. This is very useful and coming in sequence after Startup India. I think this just flowed so beautifully well. I'm sure most of us related with how, the first stage is leading to the second and how the capital allocation is happening. And particularly thanks, I think the level of detail you both have taken us through, Salil and you, on scheme by scheme, fund by fund. I think for startups, it's going to be it's very easy to now come back precisely with specific questions. So we'll keep questions for the end, but just like Neelam picked up the prior question, if there's something which is really Robinson, Neelam, anyone, or any of the panelists, if there's a question you guys have picked up which you think should be answered right away, we can even take that for a Arijit. Neelam, any that you think?
No, not really.
Okay, I wasn't watching the questions. Okay, so we'll keep moving then in
there
that
isn't
case.
any which is specific to SIGBI coming up, so that's why we look at it later.
Yeah, so
All
this
right,
is just
perfect.
part of the financing part of the Startup India Action Plan. So that's one of the aspects which SIGBI is operating.
Yep. No, Arijit, thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Moving on to now Dr. Anita Gupta. She's a scientific advisor and head of NSTEDB at the Department of Science and Technology. Dr. Anita, over to you.
Yeah, so good afternoon. I think Salil has really set the context very well. The nationally, as a nodal body, what DPIIT has rolled out and made the environment so very conducive ever since the Startup India initiative has been launched. But for the larger audience, tell DST has been in the business of promoting science, technology, based entrepreneurship or techno entrepreneurship way back since 3 decades. And we were operating, we piloted this program, but we were operating in a subcritical manner because the message, the environment has not percolated down so very well with the academic institutions. But our catchment zone was primarily the top-rung institutions of the country, be it IITs, NITs, the technical institutions, perceived to be the seedbeds of new ideas and new knowledge. That's how we latched on to these set of institutions. So, one hand, we tried to build up the ecosystem around the institutions. So that's how we rolled out institutional programs, and we pioneered the program like Technology Business Incubator way back in 2000, but we had very handful in number. But as we speak till 2016, when this new initiative of Startup India was launched, the sensitization has gone and percolated down to the tier 2, tier 3 kind of institutions as well. So not restricted to top-rung institutions. And that gave us enough brainstorming. We churned out so many ideas as to going forward, what should be our focus, because we had a portfolio of 75 incubators in 2015. What should be the new programs to be coined and how the ecosystem should be mapped? And we came out with a program called Nidhi, which is National Initiative of Developing and Harnessing Innovation. And there we could really, the clear felt need was, while on one hand we have incubators created, which in turn support and empower startups, but there is a greater need to also, as a pre-incubation activity, where is the funding available to translate idea into working prototype, come out with a minimum viable product. There are, India's culture is so bit risk averse. As a middle class families who are, they want their wards to be in a stable job, not going for the challenging and risk oriented startup activity. So actually we tailored 2 of our components under Nidhi to suit to this requirement, and came out with a fellowship program where a student or any youngster from the technical background and good knowledge base has an idea to solve any problem. We started off with EIR program, Entrepreneur in Residence program, with a monthly fellowship of 30,000 per month. And another program, Prayas program. Prayas is also promoting young and aspiring innovators and startups, where we give funding up to 10 lakhs to convert an idea into a working prototype. And these 2 programs positioned at pre-incubation level are implemented by a set of incubators. So we empowered them with another, apart from giving them core funding to set up and manage incubators, we layered them with this EIR program and Prayas program, all done through a competitive process. It's not like anyone can aspire, because we also had a limitation of funding at our end. And we had taken a stock of this program, how really it helped the startup or innovator community at large after having piloted this program. And this has really gained a lot of traction, visibility in terms of we could see out of say 400 odd innovators supported under Prayas program and similar number in the EIF program. Happy to share that like nearly 70% of these beneficiaries could form a startup. So this gave enough confidence that whatever idea they are working on, there's a market and they could build some sort of attraction and they could leverage external funding as well. So these pre-incubation programs have really made a difference, although it is not to the size of the country which may be requiring, because we cannot cater. But this two programs have given, I think METI also has actually incorporated in their new Type 2.0 EIR program. And these two, and once this pipeline of these two programs is now taken forward, many enter the formal incubation program to get formal support from the through the ongoing programs. And there we also we were the first to come out with a seed support program, because seed support during the initial first 2-3 years is a very critical requirement for the first generation entrepreneur working in the technical domain, because they cannot have the they cannot go to conventional funding avenues like banks. So that's how our seed support program, which we rolled out in 2008, was further amplified in 2016 under NIDHI. And we are giving funds up to 10 CR to incubators. So our conduit of giving funding is directed through incubators. We do not, DST does not fund any startup or innovator directly. So we have mechanisms, and through incubators only it is done. But we have structured programs, and incubatees, they apply to incubator, and they have a local level selection committee. And on an average, 500 startups have been supported through this program. And in the new revamped program, we may give to the startup having promise and potential up to 1 CR, which the instruments could be actually chalked out based on case to case. It's both loan, debt, and equity. So instruments are could be combination, or it's decided on case to case basis. And as per the latest study which we did with IIT Kanpur, we have come out that for 1 rupee invested in each startup, startups have been able to leverage it to raise 5x from the external investment, be it angels or VCs. So that's the finding, which is really good, that seed support comes very handy, and it's relatively hassle-free. That's how seed support is the most value-added offering under NIDHI. Then another program which we piloted was the accelerator program. Although now, as I see from the Startup India portal, there are incubators and accelerator inclusive 700 odd. So that's quite a big number. And corporates are running their own accelerator program. So we also, since 2016, are running accelerator program, which are some are generic, some are theme based, like in agri sector or for biotech sector, medical devices sector. These are programs cohort with usual cohort base and with a demo day. So the startups are curated with a strong mentorship pool, which comes and guides and handholds the startups. Typical size is 10 to 12. We have funded close to 20 different accelerator programs, and some of these startups have really gone out and raised further investment thanks to the strong confidence which they gain through after undergoing this acceleration program. Another element we also focused, though in a limited number, because women were underrepresented. So we had some good programs on women entrepreneurship, propelling women entrepreneurship, nurturing, and happy to share with V program with IIT Delhi, then WEQ program Women Entrepreneurship Quest with anitaB.org. We had Empower program with Zone Startup based out of BSC, Bombay Stock Exchange. These programs have really garnered good traction because I could see the sea change in the confidence level of women entrepreneurs. They are really actually when we took them to Silicon Valley, our Thai community was really impressed. The profile they lack, they do not lack any knowledge, skills, very confident, and the kind of problems they are solving. So this was such a welcome note, but as shared by Salil, lot needs to be done, and I think we all are on same page as to really make the Indian ecosystem much more enabling, much more conducive. And another aspect, like we had piloted mostly all the programs which Salil had highlighted, be it international market access. We had programs with 8 countries. One is like with Brazil, it's completely focused on agri domain. With Switzerland, we had how to academia can turn entrepreneurs, academic industry interface. India Innovation Growth Program with Lockheed Martin and Tata Trust was a hugely successful program in its second version. But with the pandemic and new world order being set, our public-private partnership programs have taken a hit. So far, although we had a classic examples, we had a special calls for COVID-related funding to startups, which that was a Kavach program, and another we rolled out with the second wave of COVID was the Nidhi for COVID program. So under these two special rapid response program, there were good response because we could see how startups were the new catalyst of change from zero to surplus, be it in the ventilators or the PPEs, or so we had seen that. And particularly, you must have heard of the ventilator project by IIT Kanpur, Nokak Robotics, that we had funded. And this was possible through the sheer collaborative network, strong alumni network, mentors cutting across the global supply chain, validation, and taking doctors and hospitals on board. And that's how this was unthinkable in the normal times when a product of this kind could see the light of the day and be successful. So we need to replicate these stories. So these are the shining samples and stories that government cannot do alone, institutions cannot do alone, startup cannot do alone. Every stakeholder, strong mentors, strong you can say supply chain and validation, regulatory, everything has to comply with and backed by strong funding. So if that is the ultimate target of, I think Salil will all will agree that we are aspiring to build that kind of ecosystem. We may be third in the number wise, but and very glaring example of how many unicorns every month we are seeing 2 or 3 being gaining the unicorn status. But now how can these startups be on the autopilot mode now? That's the thing, because we have sensitized all 30 state governments, industry, I think all oil PSUs have their startup program. We have been joined by, I think, more than half a dozen Government of India departments have rolled out their own incubation startup support program, be it IDEX or through Niti Aayog. So I think this is the best time for startups in terms of the kind of encouragement, the kind of programs which have been rolled out. And I met one of my colleague from US. He said when he came to know of the kind of support which our government is providing, had it been 2 decades back, he said he could have stayed back and not moved out to US. So we want to create a very conducive, although entrepreneurship is so challenging, but at the same time, it is so satisfying as well. And initial hurdles, initial hassles, if we can really iron out, rest is the survival of the fittest. So at least we must try to make the journey much more enabling, hassle-free. 3 years. After that, like it's all market dynamics which comes into play. So we are in this endeavor, and our incubators, our incubator association ISBA has taken a call that they are actually enhancing their skill set through various leadership series talks, and thanks to a pandemic, that at least we had the technology. I think last 1 year or so, I have participated in multiple programs. So that would have not been possible in the physical mode at all. So we could optimally utilize, leverage it, technology, and at least create that kind of skill set, knowledge around whatever is required, and make everything a bit which is possible for startups to really give it a shot. If not, we cannot guarantee success. Let us help them, just give them an avenue to make a good try. So that's our, I think, and days not far. I think what we are targeting, although 50,000 startups are there, will soon cross 1 lakh or so. And being startups being perceived as a catalyst, disruptors, catalyst of change, a good change. I think India is in the right path as far as the startup goes. So thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Anita. I'll be very honest with you. I had no idea DST had such a breadth of activity. I had in the startup ecosystem. Obviously, we do know that this was just completely surprising. I've heard a lot about the ventilator program. Shrikant is a good friend of both Neelam and mine, and he was one of the moderators in the past session. So we know much about that project, and congratulations. What an impact you've been able to be delivered. Nidhi is a fantastic program. I've heard so much about it. I obviously learned much more today. And that 1 crore going as far as 5x times, that is just completely fantastic. Thank you very much. I'm going to move over to Jeet Vijayvargiya. Jeet is the CEO of the METI Startup Hub, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, Government of India. Jeet, thanks. You've been a very strong supporter of ASSOCHAM, and this is the second time I'm seeing you in about 4 or 5 events. So pleasure to have you back here with us, and look forward to you sharing more about what METI is doing.
Rohit, thank you so much for the introduction. And yes, this is my second time here, right? And the reason is because if we don't get the word out, then how would all this start? So almost 200 of them sitting here today. How would they know all the things that we are trying to do? And first thing I want to definitely say is what Dr. Anita Gupta has done over the decades at DST, NSTEDB, the work they have done, because as she mentioned, we are a country of middle class. We have literally from the 70s and 80s come out of the ages where we can aspire to be leaders. And then it didn't happen overnight. It's a risk-averse culture, as Dr. Anita Gupta was saying. It took generations of subliminal work that was done by NSTEDB, setting up this nucleus of innovation across academia that over time changed the fabric and the viewpoint of the Indian middle class, that not everyone has to be a doctor and engineer. You can actually become a businessman, and businessman doesn't mean a kirane wala. You can actually be an entrepreneur who can actually look at forward-thinking businesses. And this is why it's really heartening that every time I attend ASSOCHAM events, that we see a couple of hundred people show up, at least. So that's always a great testimonial to the kind of community you're building, the programming you're doing, and the outreach you have. Because see, now it took decades of work, but the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister to say, okay, where can India compete? What is the comparative advantage of our nation? Is it in our infra? Is it in our current account surplus? Is it in our fiscal policy, monetary policy? Where is our competitive advantage? In 2016, he had the vision to realize that India will be built on the shoulders and intellect of its youth. We had the demographic dividend, and we had the intellect, brain power, and the DNA to create things. We are a jugaad country, right? There's always a survival of fittest, as Dr. Gupta was mentioning, that there's always a tendency, right? We need to fight to survive. That's a ecology and evolution. And so Indians, be it in US, be it anywhere else, are extremely successful as a diaspora. Look at Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley, when it was created, 70% of either the founders or the first 5 employees in any Silicon Valley company used to be Indian because they needed a technical co-founder. So when Indians can go out and create for the rest of the world, then why can't Indians not stay in India and create for India? And that is where our Honorable Prime Minister created the Startup India vision and the Digital India mission and said, let's empower the youth. Let's put in the money and the infra that they can actually build community around their own innovation. And we have
Robinson, I think, is everyone struggling to hear Jeet?
Can you hear me?
I can't hear.
Connection issues.
Yeah,
Can you
we
hear
lost
me now?
him for a minute.
Jeet, you're back, but your line has been a bit unstable. So if you could turn off the video, perhaps it'll hold on well.
Yeah, can you hear me now? Is it any better?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, much better.
All right. So I'll keep the video off just to conserve on the bandwidth. So the point is that Startup India has actually consolidated the mission and enabled the acceleration of the aspiration of the Indian youth. Now, what has MIT been doing? Being a line ministry, and during pandemic, we realized the importance of digital India. Historically, we used to say that education is a great equalizer. Now we realize that technology is a great equalizer. Having access to technology, irrespective of the geography you're sitting in, you are connected. You are an enabler and a creator. And so a lot of things have been happening at the ministry to support startups. If you allow me, I'll show a few slides as well, just to, if you enable my screen sharing.
Robinson, can you please?
Yes, sir. You can see your screen right now, sir.
So is the screen visible?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll take just 5 minutes to quickly walk through it. So MSH is, I guess, the youngest of the 3 here. So NSTDB has been working for decades, Startup India for 5-6 years. MSH was created in 2019 with the vision of consolidating all the initiatives of the Ministry of Electronics and IT as they pertain to innovation, IPR, startups, and investment. And so currently, if we talk about the funding, because all the startups are critically interested in the issue of funding, so MSH provides funding across the value chain of startup, all the way from EIR grant, which is for validating an idea, and even before a company is formed, to the grant and aid for product development and prototype development, and then commercialization grant, which is 40 lakh, up to 40 lakhs of funding per startup that we give for scaling the business and commercializing the product. Last week only, we sanctioned 44 startups up to 40 lakh each and close to 18 CR that we are investing into the startups. Just last week, we cleared that file. So that's through our incubator model. Now, aside from building the incubation ecosystem, we are looking at building the accelerator ecosystem. Because I think there's a 50,000 odd startups that we have, but how many of them are actually investable? How do we actually take these idea level startups and very basic level and accelerate their growth? So we are launching an accelerator scheme where we are going to be funding 300 startups. And I think that scheme is going to be launched on 22nd or 26th of this month. So do go to the MSH website and stay connected to get update on that scheme. After the acceleration funding, the bigger issue is, okay, I've got this much, but a startup needs a lot more funding to scale. And hence, MIT has set up a couple of different fund of funds. EDF is an electronic development fund, which was set up a couple of years ago by the ministry, focused on investing in electronics and hardware-oriented startups, because those are the startups that don't find much favor with the investors. Investors tend to prefer SaaS-based or app-based or aggregator-based model. So electronic and hardware startups were not getting so much traction. So Mighty set up that fund of fund, which is being managed by Can Bank and has invested in daughter VC funds. Similarly, we are in the process of setting up something called SPDF, Software Product Development Fund. The idea is that India has set up the IT infrastructure of the world. How do we move from an IT services country to a software product oriented company? How do we reduce our reliance on the SaaS product from the Western world? Why can we not create our own world-class SaaS startups? So this fund of fund, again, we are looking at a corpus of 5,000 CR in that, will be focused on investing in software-based product startups. So in summary, we are funding all the way from idea level to the fund of fund level, which is for scale funding. As for our assets, so this is our timeline and our scheme. So there are multiple schemes that we're working on and programs. In terms of our assets, so we have 51 incubators that we are supporting, 26 center of excellences. Center of excellence are more theme-based and more technology intensive and emerging technology oriented. So be it in AR, VR, drone technologies, robotics, blockchain. So you will find them spread all across India. And these are actually quite intensive place for actually working on innovation and excellence. So there's our startups can access those as well. Aside from that, we have accelerator programs we're running, and we do a lot of challenges or hackathons to find critical solutions for strategic problems faced by corporates or ministries. We have done 42 of them in the last year and a half. And we have an IPR scheme whereby we reimburse international and domestic patent filing and the IPR protection for our startups. So you guys can reach out to us and we can try to reimburse on the patent filing if they meet certain criteria. As for our other assets, so Mighty being a line ministry, we have multiple bodies which actually give us quite a lot of heft in terms of the access to researchers, equipment, institutes that are part of our ecosystem. Also, we do quite a lot of partnership initiatives. So being electronics and IT based, all the Googles, PayPal, Paytm, Cisco's, Qualcomm, everybody comes to us since we are their line ministry. And we are doing a lot of different kind of programs with them to build up the ecosystem in India. So for example, with different large companies, we launch different scalability programs. So for example, with Google, we look at something like App Scale Academy. How do you build the app that's scalable and that can address the issues of compliance and regulatory issues and get on the Play stores? So that's the program. Other things we are doing is we are doing multiple international exchange programs for soft landing as well as knowledge exchange. We have a couple of them going on with one with France, a couple with UK. We have one that will be launching with Saudi in the very near future in the next few weeks. We are launching one program with Germany in the next month. So the goal here is, as per the Honorable Prime Minister's vision, that India should build for the world, not just for India. We need to get connected to the startup ecosystems around the world. A lot of foreigners and foreign technologies come to India for market access, but we need to export our technologies, our ambitions, and our solutions to not only the LDCs, less developed countries, but also the Western world, and get the capital from those markets. So we are working on a lot of these international initiatives. In terms of challenges, we did 47 of them so far. Right now, we currently are finishing our challenge with BSF, Border Security Force, to identify solutions to strengthen our national security by strengthening our borders. We are funding 2.5 CR of award money for the startups via that challenge. And we are looking at under-tunnel technology, detection of underground tunnels, anti-drone technologies, and a couple of other initiatives that the BSF is looking at. We also did the COVID app challenge with the Ministry of Health and Family Wellness when we're looking for COVID vaccine distribution network enhancements. Also, we have done challenge with Jal Shakti, video conferencing challenges to find out solutions, indigenous solution for video conferencing. So a lot of these initiatives have been done in the ministry over the last year and a half. As for the building capacity of incubators and startups, over the last year, we have done 70 odd capacity building programs for our startups and incubators. Now, this is the last slide I'll share, because that was MSH 1.0. Now, when we look at MSH 2.0, what are the needs of the emerging tech startups? Typical economics says you need land, labor, capital, equipment, and some expertise, right? That's economics 101 to start an enterprise. But the future companies of India, the startups of today, the industries of tomorrow, what do they need? So for land, it's a digital platform, bandwidth. For machine and equipment, we have 80 odd assets around the country where they can use the capex and the machines there. Raw material data lakes. We are aggregating data lakes so our AI algos and startups can actually feed that data for their product building. We have Freelance Academy whereby we are engaging hardcore, techies who like to work in a gig economy framework, work on projects. So because one of the difficulties startup face is finding technical co-founders who can build a platform. And hence we want to have these technical experts in-house associated with us on a platform, and they can work on different projects. We are launching an investment fund in the framework of Y Combinator to enable more private sector participation in the government grants and schemes. We have a mentor program under the tutelage of Gurukul, whereby we can bring Indian traditional heritage in terms of mentor-mentee relationship and not just be more consultants in the disguise of mentors. So a little bit of a twist in terms of how mentoring is done. Then, of course, startup school in terms of upskilling and skill development of our startups, because building a product is one thing, but building a company is another thing. So how do you actually enable the growth of startups by building their skills? So we are doing all these initiatives under our MSH 2.0 to address all the issues that the startups are facing, because Startup India is doing something at a very different level to aggregate the resources and enable the ease of business. DST has been funding amazing resources across the country under Dr. Gupta's leadership. And now, so we are looking to strengthen the pillars of hardware, hardcore deep tech technologies by providing these framework-based approach to aggregating and enabling the resources. But anyway, so I will stop my presentation here because I know we are on a time crunch, and I hate it when people say, you take too much time.
No, Jeet, this is very useful. Thank you very much. I'm glad you did take as much time, and perhaps it would have been longer if we had more time. But really appreciate it. The breadth and impact is just phenomenal. I know, Jeet, you have to rush out for a meeting, and therefore I'm going to take a minute or two here and see if there are any questions which you can take before you leave. Neelam?
Yeah, so there is a question which has come up for Jeet, which you can help us and answer. It says, how can a software startup in its first year of operations without any collateral avail any funding at an early stage from government institutions?
Jeet, you're on mute.
Jeet, you're on mute.
Sorry, I think there's plenty of ways we can answer this because, but I'll tell you purely from IT's perspective. So there's funding available through multiple channels. One is you can join one of the incubators being supported by MIT, one of our tight centers, and you can avail the grant, EIR grant there, or the scale of prototype funding or the accelerator funding. Second is you can actually join through our direct funding programs when we do challenges. You can join through that program for the direct funding, or because see, we are more of a scheme based, so we have multiple schemes to fund. And if you fit into any of those, our idea is to make sure that we can give you funding at a later stage so you become more viable for the later stage investors. So there's a multiple schemes. I'll put in my our email address in the chat so you guys can reach out to us with any specific questions, comments, feedback, thoughts, requests you have, because coming to a forum like this and just giving yarn and going away is the worst waste of time. So I definitely would really appreciate it if you guys reach out to us, if you connect with us, and we will try to be very responsive. And I think our Honorable Prime Minister had made it a mandate in every ministry to respond in 72 hours. So we do like to respond, and you will be surprised. You may think that startup never gets an answer from the ministry, but we do reply. You will get the response if you send us a message.
Fantastic. Any other question, Neelam, that you want to pick up?
There was one more which says, can agri startups get funding from MIT?
Sure. Agri startup, see again, we are looking at under multiple programs, right? So if you're looking at agri is a industry vertical. Now you can look at, is it an agri based on the blockchain, on the AI based framework? What kind of framework are we looking at? So funding is available. We are not a MSME or agri ministry. We're not looking at one industry. We're looking at plethora of opportunities across the technology spectrum. We are a Ministry of Electronics and IT. So anything that falls under technology, then we are looking to fund those. And the more deep tech you are, the more likelihood that we will be looking to support you guys.
Okay, thanks, Jeet.
Jeet,
Mr. Rohit, I also have a hard stop at 3:30 because of my another
yes, Dr. Gupta, we should target to wrap up all by 3:30. So we are down to Dr. B.K. Sahu. And Jeet, thanks. I know you wanted to leave, so totally your call if you want to jump out now or if you can hold on with us till 3:30. We're moving on to Dr. B.K. Sahu. He's the head of NRDC Intellectual Property Facilitation Center at the NRDC. So over to you, Dr. Sahu.
Thank you, Rohitji. Robinson, can you allow me for sharing my slide? Although time is very, but yeah, okay, thank you.
No,
Yes,
we should go with, we can accelerate it, Dr. Sahu, but please do share.
Hope my PPT is visible to all of you.
Yes. No.
Yes, sir.
So I'd just like to compliment to point out the ecosystem of innovation in India we are lacking today is intellectual property. And if you see the recent parliamentary report on intellectual property right, intellectual property rights, someday you might be this infringing, and also there is a issues of infringement and also plagiarism, violation of today, or in the all the sector economy, not only one of the bottleneck today, and we have to see the changing paradigms on ecosystem. We must not forget technology because India depends on import of and can you, if you
Dr. Sahu, you have a bit of a line issue. If you can switch off your video, we will hear you better. No.
May have power and so it is the one of the
Dr.
biggest
Sahu,
challenge today for us.
Dr.
How
Sahu,
we can.
Dr. Sahu, can you please turn off your video? The line is a bit patchy on your side. Can you turn off your, yeah, I think your video is off now. Your line is coming a little patchy, so we're struggling to hear you.
Sir, am I audible? Okay.
You're audible now.
So what I am doing. So what let me.
We can't hear you.
You've gone again.
Then what I'm doing, let me switch off my video. So listen,
your presentation is also gone.
To hear my voice?
We can hear you. We can hear you, but we cannot see your slides
you
anymore.
Allow me to.
Sir, please share your content, sir. I make you as a presenter, sir.
Robinson, if you have Dr. Sahu's number,
you can,
see if you can call him on the side and check with him.
Sure,
okay,
sure,
he's back.
Now we can
yes,
see your slides and hear you.
Please go.
I'm not sharing the slide now because I think because of Audi and the thunderstorm here, there is an internet problem here. So you are.
No, Dr. Sahu, we can't hear you even without the slides.
Okay.
No,
okay.
No. Dr. Sahu, we'll have to take a pause here. I think your line is extremely bad. We'll take a pause here. What we'll do is Robinson will share your details with the panelists, with the participants, so that if anyone has a question, they can reach out to you separately. But we are really struggling to hear you. I think his line dropped as well. So with this, we are 4 minutes into the time, and Neelam, I'll request you to wrap it all up for all of us.
Yeah, I will. Though there was a specific question on IPR, professional can get an opportunity to impanel themselves for providing the service to MSME. I think that was something which we could have had Dr. Sahu address for us, but we'll take it up some other time. Rohit, thanks a lot for doing this session. It was really interesting for me. I had very little information as we started, but I must thank each and every speaker for being here and sharing their thoughts, as well as the programs which government has, which the startup community can take advantage of. I'm sure that we will see much more action in the next few days. And I think Salil and Dr. Anita, thank you for being here right through. And so I think you'll get more questions than you looked at. And Salil, you would also be getting some questions from the community. Arijit, thanks a lot for your time. And I appreciate all the participants for being here in this meeting today. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks, Neelam. Thanks for wrapping it up for all of us. It was, by the way, I've never taken as many notes on a panel discussion as I've taken today, because it was almost starting from scratch and building it all the way. So Salil, Arijit, Dr. Neeta, thank you so very much.
Thank you all, sir. Thank you all, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.